So you didn't catch anything this morning?
No,
Did you get bites?
I got one. I got one small skipper and 2 smallmouth.
And no one was across from you?
Nope.
We
Nobody
were-
was across. Nobody was down.
We were talking about dropback steelhead. Scotty was on the show last week with Ricky, or a couple weeks ago. We were talking about how like wacky the dropback season is because of how early the spring is. But I think they're there. I just think this water flow is like messing with them a little bit. You know what I mean? Like before you got here, it was good. It was consistent. The day you got here, it was wacky until the afternoon when you arrived.
Yeah, it was good. The afternoon. It's still not consistent. There's nothing consistent about that river. And the problem is it's the water. You know, it changes constantly.
I mean, how many years have you been fishing dropback steelhead?
Oh, I started going up the Salmon River in 99. So I'm 25 years. Probably the first 2 or 3 years I only did salmon. Got tired of that real quick. And then,
Just
and then
fishing steelhead from then on?
yeah, no, I mean, we bounced in the beginning because it was.
My point was like,
Dropback season should be right now.
yeah.
Should be the way it used to be. Should be easily 20 to 30 fish a day.
The way it used to be.
The way it used to be. And it was only egg sacs.
And consistent, too.
Consistent.
Like, I don't remember water flows messing with them too much
No,
7 years ago.
We're trying to think of reasons why it's not good.
I think it just sucks in general compared to what it was.
I do too. I just don't think there's as many fish.
I agree.
I think a lot of fish get taken out of that river throughout the season compared to what used to get taken out.
Well, there was that many more years ago that it didn't really matter.
It didn't really matter, but I mean, you get, 30, 40 boats every day on that river all season long.
Yeah.
You know how many fish come out of that river every day? 100?
Something like that.
They go home?
They account for that when they stock the river. You know what I mean? And there's natural reproduction too. But some years there's more fish, taken in the winter than other years. And then that's pretty consistent. But there's year classes where there's just a lot of steelhead, and that doesn't really matter how many are taken. Again, that's all taken into account. It is a put and take fishery. It was built that way.
It was
for people to come up, drum up money for the count. You know what I mean? That's what it was for.
It's a stocked fishery.
100%.
I mean, yeah, there is natural reproduction more in our river than, probably one of the only rivers that rivals it is the Cattaraugus. And that's just because it's all gravel and the size of that river. It can do it.
It's long.
It's long. But this river, I mean, even in the lake, those boats that can take 5 a day, steelhead a day, and they're taking 5 a day. That's a lot of fish out of that system.
Yeah.
I mean, but after, before the internet, the internet came out in 95, 96, but it really didn't become
early 2000s was like
a thing.
Yeah.
Until basically MySpace.
Sure.
And then when people started talking, after November, December, I would never see anybody in the backyard. We'd be by ourselves. If we saw somebody in December, we'd be like, oh my God, look, somebody else.
Sure.
Now if we're there in February, there'll be 15 guys back there.
Yeah.
So like yesterday when I went up river, I hit all those fish because that spot hadn't been fished all day. So if you look, 15 years ago, a lot of these spots that we would go to hadn't been fished all day. So it was easier to grab that fish.
Yeah.
Now, you get this line of people that come through all the time and they hit these holes.
You're batting cleanup as the fourth guy.
Fourth guy. And I'm not a sit and wait type of guy. I'm kind of like the go and find the fish. And maybe that's why I'm, so aggressive when it comes to topwater tuna. But I want to go find the fish. I don't want to wait for the fish to come to me. I want to go hit the ones that are, haven't seen anything all
When
day.
did you get there? Monday afternoon?
What's today?
Wednesday?
Today's Wednesday? Yeah, Monday afternoon. Monday afternoon.
And you and Dave Thomas went?
Yeah, we had
not Dave Thomas from Wendy's. Dave Thomas,
right?
The Salmon
not
River
the not the founder. Yeah, we had probably 15 fish in the last hour and a half
before dark.
Yeah,
and then Tuesday morning.
I hit 6 or 7 as the sun was coming up, but right when the sun got up and it lit up the river, that was it. And
that's all float fishing, center pin,
all float fishing,
beads, bags, worms,
beads, mostly beads. I didn't even use the worms until last night, and then last night I got a couple bouncing worms, pink worms, and and then 8 or 9 others on beads.
I'm gonna try those worms that you gave me this week, and if they work, I'm not telling a soul about those.
No, Chris said that to me too on the way home.
I think those worms that we're using, the standard worms, I think those fish have been, well, one, it's not a great replica of a fake worm, but two, I feel like those fish that keep coming back into the system.
They've seen it so many times.
I do. It's a weird thing that once they eat it once and they get hooked, I don't want to give them too much credit, but
they do learn. I mean, look at lures that we used to use as a kid that don't work the same way. Like when I was a kid, my parents didn't have any money, and my father used to buy me a Phoebe. That's what I was able to fish with, a gold Phoebe, right? And I think they cost $2 back then. We used to catch all the trout in the world on a Phoebe, right? I can't catch trout on a Phoebe anymore. I can, but not compared to, using a Rapala or something else. I also think it's because the state stocks a lot less fish than they used to fish.
I think we'll get into a time in our lives where what's old is new again. Where
it's fashion does the same thing. I mean? Fashion does the same thing.
I agree.
Is
that why you have bell-bottom jeans on today?
Yeah.
For the podcast?
Yeah. I mean, growing up, the kids would always make fun of us. They're like, you guys with your pants and your jeans and your bell-bottoms.
Your Jankos.
You used to wear your Jankos.
Your Janko jeans.
And now that you see that trend coming back, so.
You don't wear tight jeans? Skinny jeans?
That's what I tell her.
You didn't strike me as a guy that when I first met you that was going to wear skinny jeans.
I told her, I said, we need more guys with tight sweatpants on.
Do you know any charter captains for tuna that are tight jean guys?
No, but
are they mostly like just?
We have an ongoing debate about Crocs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like chartering in Crocs or just wearing Crocs?
No, all of that.
Oh, that's a thing?
That's a thing. Yeah, I just think all your masculinity leaks out of the holes on those things. Because I'll never buy a pair of them. And I text one of the other charter guys, and we had this little debate going. I was like, there's no way he wears those. And he's a wise ass, and he responded, he goes, yeah, I love them. And I was like, I don't know how to take that. Like, does he really? Or is he just being me? And he really likes them.
Well,
do you have a pair?
I do not. But
do you have a pair?
Ricky, no. Scotty, do you? Scotty Too Hottie behind the camera? You don't? Ricky is a big Croc wearing guy. He's on the podcast from time to time. So
it's rough.
Anyways, well, that's steelhead season. I mean, by the time this show airs, I think we'll probably be close to May, and I think things will be pretty much wrapped up by then.
There was a couple years back, we went up to a spot mid-river that used to be. You can't fish it now anymore. It's private, but I remember we were doing on a 3-day trip, we did over 20, 30 fish a day on Memorial Day.
I believe it.
Memorial Day.
Those year classes where there was a lot of fish, it was a late winter.
Right.
And the water was colder.
And we were getting snow in April.
Yep.
Still. There was a big snow pack at Tug Hill. And the river was, up. But we went mid-river, and I couldn't even believe it. There wasn't even smallmouth. Like, I'm catching smallmouth in the river right now.
Yeah.
And I know people are saying that's normal. That's not normal.
It's not. It's not.
It's for people to be targeting smallmouth right now. That's odd.
Yeah. It's not odd to catch one. It is odd to catch as many as we have, and people to be there just looking for smallmouth.
Right. That was always a first week in May.
Yeah. Maybe last week in April. If the water's been low and it's been warm. But like this morning, I caught 2 smallmouth, and they were both 3 or 4 pounds, and I wasn't targeting them by catch. So, yeah. I mean, I think we got another 2 weeks. I'd say 2 weeks. There's still fish in the hatchery. You know that.
Yep.
And then I was in the upper fly zone this past weekend, and there were some fish on gravel spawning. But very few, but they were kicking around.
Yeah. We looked in the creek, right past the hatchery, and it was completely loaded with fish still.
But all in the beds. I think, like when we were chatting yesterday, when they're done, they're going. They're not going to meander down the river and let you take a crack at them.
Well, here's an example. So I walked to the bottom of the stairs last night in that little diversion that we have at the bottom of our stairs. There was one steelhead sitting in it up at the head, right? I kicked him out of the way, and an hour and a half later I came down. That 50-yard diversion, he was gone because I walked right up the middle of it.
Yeah.
And I went to look for him again, and it was a big fish. He can't hide. And I went to look, and that's how quick he covered that section of
Sure.
river with basically no current on him, and he was out of there on his own.
Yeah, they don't want to deal with that. Well, we're gonna get into some tuna talk today with Captain Matt Perachio. Hey, before we start here, I gotta give a shout out to the folks at the Syracuse Police Department and the Onondaga County Sheriff Department. We've gone through a pretty crazy time. Lost 2 guys recently, a murder situation, and I'm close with a lot of those guys. I just, our thoughts and prayers are with them. By the time the show airs, will be a few weeks removed, but there's a lot of crazy things going on close by Cortland up in Syracuse right now, and those guys, do a great job day in and day out. So I want to just give a shout out to those guys, let them know that we're thinking of them, not to bring the show down, but it is kind of a crazy time around here right now. So I just wanted to do that before we kicked off the show with Captain Matt Perachio from Tighten Up Charters, my boy Nate Dogg's in the house, Scotty Too Hottie is behind the camera. I'm your host, Brooks Robinson, and this is Cortland Hooked, the podcast. So episode 2 with Captain Matt, because we did an episode, I think it was almost 18 months ago.
Yeah, we just looked it up. It was November.
We tuna fished together in October of 2022. You came up and steelhead fished in November, and then we did a show after that. So it's been some time, which is cool in the sense that we can kind of recap what happened last year during the season, and as we get prepared for this season.
Was that 22 you came? Was it 23?
It was 22 because last fall was 23 and we didn't fish together.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
So
yeah, that's right.
I know it's crazy when you get old how shit quickly happens. So I went through the last episode just so we could kind of steer this one in the right direction of things that we didn't chat about, because we talked for what seemed like 4 to 5 hours, even though the show I think was the longest show that we've ever done, which was like probably an hour 40. And we kind of hit on everything that we could tuna fishing, which is hard to do in a short podcast because there's so many aspects of tuna fishing that can just go on forever.
Forever and ever.
Like you said, like we could spend one show just on topwater. We could spend one show just on jigging. Yeah. One show just on live bait.
And trolling.
One show just on trolling, right? Yeah. So and probably maybe by 2027 we'll be on episode 6 with you. Right. That's the goal.
Okay? I've gotten such great feedback from customers, clients, and friends. They absolutely loved what we did on the first one. They said it was really informative. And we got a lot of topics out there people are interested in.
I think this audience, because Cortland, yes, we've been in business since 1915, but the bulk of what Cortland has been known for in the past is fly fishing, right? Up until recently is when the conventional braid has really started to take off. So I think what's cool about this podcast and having you on is most people that tune in are maybe fly fishing based, but we're kind of opening their eyes to like all this other shit that we got going on here at Cortland.
A lot of guys that want to fly fish for tuna.
And like you were saying, you had really good feedback. I think Scotty and I looked it up. It was the second most downloaded and viewed episode next to our boy John Shaner, who is a fly fishing like legend.
Was that the pike?
No. Shaner's a trout guy. He's a legend, and we have that audience. So it doesn't surprise me that that's number one. So what I'm telling you is like we have to beat that today.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want, Matt asked me the other day. He's like, "That's got to be number one." I was like, "I'll look," and it wasn't. I'm like, "Oh, he's getting pissed about that." So
no, we just got to get it.
We'll try to get that. And I think we have a bigger audience now than what we did when we first started. But you are right. The feedback from that episode was great. The funny thing, Matt texted me the other day. He's like, every once a week I get a text about like the show, whatever. 2 days later, he sends me a text, a screenshot of this guy. He's like, "Dude, I love the podcast. Didn't know about tuna meatballs." So we got into a whole discussion about using the tail cut of a tuna that's usually got like grizzle and sinew and shit in it, and how to grind it and make tuna meatballs. And the bulk of the feedback was
Right.
positive
You're hungry now, right?
regarding tuna meatballs. I don't know if I brought one into him, but anyways,
No, you did not.
That was really cool. So
Did you make them with the fish we?
yeah,
Well,
100%.
Okay.
No, I caught a tuna with somebody else and made.
No,
yeah,
I meant
absolutely.
with the tuna that we caught. You made them at home.
Yeah,
Right, and they're great.
yeah, they're awesome. Even
Yeah.
my kids ate them. They didn't know what they were eating.
Yeah.
They're just like, this is awesome. So,
Yeah.
anyway, so Matt's in the house. Nate's here. I asked the boys who wanted to come in today, and I think it was Ricky texted me back. He's like, "What are we gonna be talking about? Like tuna?" I'm like, "No, we're gonna talk about potatoes today." Yeah, we're gonna talk about tuna fishing today with Matt. So, so before we get into some of the tuna stuff, you started a new company, LLC, correct? Bluefin Plus. In like a kind of give our listeners a recap of what is Bluefin Plus, and then I'll kind of maybe ask you some questions after that.
All right. Bluefin Plus is a new platform that we're building, and it seems to be evolving, right? Like we had this idea of what we wanted to do in the beginning, and it's been changing based on what the feedback we're getting from the people that are,
and that'll go on for a while.
It'll go on for a while, and I don't know if it'll ever find a place that it's supposed to be at. Basically what it was is when I first started tuna fishing, I didn't get a lot of help from guys. I kind of got passed over, and I had a lot of kind of learn it for yourself type of thing.
Sure.
I made a lot of mistakes. I bought a lot of the wrong gear, and I didn't waste time. That's not the right way to put it, because
you were learning.
I was learning. Wasting time would be if you didn't learn from that experience.
Yeah, you just kept doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
Yeah.
The definition of insanity.
Sure.
Expecting different results. So I learned, and I'm a fisherman. I've been a fisherman my whole life, so it wasn't difficult. It was just tuna fishing in general is a little hard to grasp when you first start it. And there's so many articles and there's so much knowledge out there, but that's all geographically different depth, and there's so many different. You have to learn it for yourself, and that's what I'm trying to help people with Bluefin Plus. I'm trying to help them not make the same mistakes I did, and I'm doing it from like an unbiased, an unsponsored point of view. So we're not sponsored by anybody. We don't want any sponsors. Because I want to give accurate results.
You list the companies you work with,
of course,
but as far as being like driven in one direction and shoving companies down these people's throats that they're members, it's like that's what this is an unbiased.
It's unbiased.
It's information based.
It's information based from an unbiased perspective, point of view. So like hook companies, I've had sponsors, and line companies, I've had sponsors. But this stuff, like the hook testing I'm doing, is I'm coming up with the best hook. It doesn't matter, because I want to give a real, accurate, test. And then we're doing these. It's on a small subscription base, but I'm doing these videos, and I'm trying to help people learn the quick way, but the correct way to get into tuna fishing, from somebody who made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. And I could cut your learning curve down by...
How are you doing the hook testing? Like what?
The hook testing I did, I'm doing them with 2.0 trebles.
Do you get a bunch of brands in?
Yeah, I have 6 or 7 of the most commonly used brands in the workshop. And I'm just pulling them to open them up. And I also did a corrosion test. So we took, buckets of salt water, and we were soaking these hooks in the salt water for 3 days in, 3 days out, 3 days in, 3 days out. And we did it for 2 months. And then, we had close-up pictures of the hooks before and after, and we want to see what hook corrodes.
Was there a big difference in brand to brand?
Yeah, there was a big difference in brand to brand, but you have to weigh your options, So if the brand doesn't corrode...
What are its other negatives, right? What are
it
its
opens
other...
up.
Yeah, sure.
It opens up easy.
Sure.
The barb is small, maybe the shank is smaller on the hook.
The gap's bigger, the gap's smaller.
The gap, right. So you have to weigh your options, and you have to basically take all these factors and put them together and come up with what you consider to be the best hook.
Gotcha.
And sometimes you're paying, $18-$20 for a 5-pack of hooks. So, you're $4 a hook. You know, it's $8 per lure if you're putting 2 trebles on a lure. You kind of want to get your best foot forward. And we spend so much money in tuna fishing as it is that you don't need to spend a lot of money in these certain places when you could put that money somewhere else.
Right.
And that's what I did in the beginning. I spent a ton of money on stuff that is hanging in my closet or my shed or my garage. I'm never going to use it again.
Right. Sounded good at the time when you bought it.
It sounded great. I read articles. Everybody said they caught fish on it. Useless.
So is this going to be it's a subscription-based platform?
It's a subscription. So what we're doing is there's the products on the website, you know, hoagies, siren, lures and stuff. So there's products on the website that we're selling, and we're selling them. It's all I use.
Sure.
So there's everything on the website is what I use in my operation.
So it's like I pay for a monthly, 6-month, yearly subscription type thing to Bluefin Plus. And like, what would I get in return? Like articles, videos, like
articles. You're gonna have access to all the podcasts that I've done, all the how-to tutorial videos that we have up there.
That you've done personally.
That I've done personally. It's giving access to me, and it's also giving access to me as if you have questions. I want emails. I want messages.
Sure.
I want calls. Tell me what you need to learn. Tell me what you don't know about, and I will structure a video based on what you need.
Sure.
To better.
And they could reach out with just a simple question.
A simple question, yes. Because the stuff that I think people need to learn is beyond most of the time what people actually need to learn. You know, I'm assuming that most of the people that start tuna fishing are fishermen. You know, they've been fishermen. And I can't assume that.
Yep.
So I have to sit. I wrote a list up last week of new videos that we're going to do. There had to have been 80 things on this list. Like in I think it was 4 pages. And I'm asking some of the novice guys, and I said, can you do me a favor? You know, and I'd give them a free subscription or something for a month. And they'd write a list up of stuff that they want me to help them with. And half the stuff on there I wouldn't even have thought of. Right. It's so far back for me.
I bet those questions are probably pretty common for most novice guys.
They are. They are.
But you're right. It's when you are removed from that, let's say, novice angler status or beginner or intermediate, and you've been doing this and you're, let's say, just for lack of a better term, an expert level, right? Even though no one's an expert, but whatever. Right. You forget that there's like very basic shit that guys don't know. Like we work here. All of us work in customer service. Like, even though we might not have that title,
I work in customer service.
Yeah, we all do. And we'll get questions from guys that are very good questions, but very basic, that it's like, yeah, I guess at this point in my career, I would never thought that someone would be thinking about how to rig this or what to do with that. You know what I mean? Just because you've done it for so long that you kind of take those things for granted now.
Like, so for example, when I first started, I didn't know how to tie an FG knot. I didn't know wind-ons existed. I didn't know anything. So how would you put a leader on? How would you do it?
Sure.
You'd put a barrel swivel at the end of your braid.
Yeah.
And then you'd put your 5 feet of mono fluoro leader.
Sure.
Because you can't have it, you know, barrel swivel can't go into your tip.
Correct.
So now you have this awkward cast.
Right.
And your leader's only half of what it should be.
Sure.
I didn't know that.
Right.
You know, and the first tuna I ever caught on spinning rods was 365 pounds. It was 86 inches.
Didn't you say you used to go out there with like big striped bass gear, thinking it was going to work?
Yeah, because you think, you know, when you first started, I was going out there with, you know, the old Penn 650 SSs and, you know, surf rods, you know, because I'm like long rod, more leverage.
Yep.
What a disaster that would have been. I didn't hook any fish.
Thank God.
Stuff. Thank God. Because I didn't have any clue how strong these fish actually were. Had I known then what I know now, I never would have. It would have been a disaster.
Has the gear evolved?
Everything has
to like an incredible level from what it was here, and you could say the same thing about it. Like I look at bows because I'm a big bow hunter.
Look at an old Hoyt from 20 years ago. How heavy it was, how long it was versus the new compact.
When I got a new bow after the one I had when I was like 17 or 18, and I shot this new thing, I was like, there's no excuses to miss a deer or wound a deer at this point.
No.
These things are so deadly.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's the same thing like in the tuna gear aspect is like your drags are way better. Your line is way better.
Everything's compact.
Yes.
It's smaller. It's stronger.
Lighter, stronger.
Yep.
The whole thing. So the Bluefin Plus, like what is Bluefin Plus though? Like what is your idea behind that?
The plus I did is because, not to talk down about any of the charter captains, but a lot of the charter captains I know, they don't fish, all year long. They'll go out here and there, but I'm a fisherman. That's what I've done my whole life. 12 months out of the year I'm fishing. When bluefin season ends, I'm actually excited about it because then steelhead will start.
Sure.
And then I can run up there. And it's a totally different type of fishing for me. Yes, bluefin's fun and everything, but my goal every day is to produce. That's what I'm getting paid to do. Up here, I can just kind of fish by myself. It's relaxing. This is kind of relaxing. Bluefin fishing is not relaxing.
No, it's not.
There's nothing relaxing about bluefin fishing.
Even when you and I went together, we were yelling at each other about shit.
Right. It's an extremely stressful way to fish. So the plus was eventually I wanted to help people with everything else that I do.
That
I know.
Sure.
Walleye fishing, steelhead fishing, centerpin fishing. That's striped bass fishing. I mean, I grew up striped bass fishing, surf fishing. So the plus I put on there because I don't want people to think it's just a tuna site. They can ask me anything they want.
Sure.
And if there's something I don't know, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say, and like you said earlier, expert level is a subjective term because we all might be experts in our field, but we all have the ability to learn more. The best fishermen out there are the ones that are open to suggestion.
Do you ever find that some of the other species you target has helped you evolve into a better tuna charter captain? Like not necessarily, there's not much resemblance in walleye fishing and tuna or striped bass and tuna or steelhead and tuna. Do you think you're just maybe a better angler from
where there's a resemblance? Largemouth bass fishing. Like if you're using a frog or a hula parpa for largemouth bass, it's really similar to using a popper for tuna, where, one of the biggest things, one of the biggest ways you attract a fish is when that lure lands. So when you're largemouth fishing, when that frog lands or the hula popper lands or the jitterbug lands, you give it 5 or 6 seconds before you start retrieving it, because that splash is that, the first sound that this fish hear, and they'll come over to that. And it's the same with tuna fishing.
Same with tuna?
Same with popper fishing.
I just mean like is your drive the same to do those other things? Have you ever, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, because getting paid to tuna fish has changed my drive. And not in a good way.
Like when you were saying you don't sit there for steelhead and wait them, like you hunt.
I hunt, and that's why I'm not a bait fisherman for tuna, and I'm not knocking bait fishermen.
I want to go bait fishing. That's the only tuna fishing I haven't done. Is I want to put bait out.
I enjoy bait fishing for tuna.
Is it a little more?
It's a little more chill.
Yeah,
it's a little more chill. You have to stay on top of it.
Correct.
The whole time. You have to be watching your machines,
your depths.
Yep. You're watching, your baits up and down. You have to be checking your baits. So, the guys that are very productive with bait fishing are the ones that are constantly watching and moving and changing and adjusting. The guys that go out and they put their baits out, their down baits, and then they go to sleep. Those are the guys that, aren't as productive in the long run.
Sure.
I just don't, I want to go find them constantly. Like whenever we're out there, we're having a tough time, we're struggling, we can't find them on the surface. I always say, I know it's happening somewhere.
Yeah.
Right now. We just have to find where it's happening.
Right. Go to those numbers where something happened on the bottom.
And that was a perfect example the day you came. Right? Like the day you came, yes, we caught a bunch of fish, but that was a tough day.
It was really tough.
Like we had to capitalize on not a lot of action.
And there wasn't a lot of, you have an intel group that you work with out there, a tight-knit group of guys. Now you do.
When the fishing isn't great.
Correct.
We're all spread way out.
And that's what happened.
Well, we were by ourselves that day.
And which was absolutely incredible. But I remember that day is it was like a Tuesday in October. There wasn't a lot of guys out there in general. You know what I mean? So you have, 3 or 4 guys you work with, we're looking, they're looking. And when it's slow, it took a while to find fish. Now, luckily, the ocean was slicked out, calm, and it was sunny, and you could see a tuna jump out of the water from 7 miles away.
And we can cover ground.
And we can cover ground, which we'll get into the gear side of things. So the plus part of the Bluefin
plus part of it is everything
diverse
else.
species related.
Yeah.
How are you going to find time because I know your schedule because we've been friends for a few years now. When you're tuna fishing day in and day out, and we went over this on our last podcast, I mean, you're up at sometimes 2:33 in the morning. You're back to the dock by 2, 3 in the afternoon, but you got to wash down. You might have to deal with the fish. You might have to sell that fish. And then you're like,
I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to do it.
This is new. Bluefin Plus.
This is new. So we just launched the site 5-6 months ago. I don't know.
Do you find that your quote unquote off season from tuna will be full bore dedicated to Bluefin Plus content?
Yes. This wasn't really even supposed to be like for a supplemental income thing. This was, I enjoy helping people and I enjoy teaching people. Me not helping people is almost wasted knowledge in my mind, where I have all this information that I can help people, and I have a way where I can, talk to people about it so that they understand it and they can apply it. I want to give that to people. When I watch guys come on my boat year after year, and every year, you have to be willing to listen. So some of the stubborn fishermen don't want to listen, right? They want to stick with what they're doing, creatures of habit. But the ones that are willing to listen, I've watched them evolve on the boat every year. Where I remember one guy specifically, I'm not going to name any names, but he came on the boat the first year and it wasn't great. It was a little bit messy. And the second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, now he comes on the boat, he's rigged, he's ready to go. I don't do anything. He knows what to look for. He knows what to target. He knows how to cast. He knows how to fight fish. Everything.
Like didn't know how to step on the boat or where to stand when he first came on. Now
he can hold his own, and that's because
he listens for one.
He listens, and it's great to watch stuff like that. So I have a lot of guys. They actually book trips with me. They have their own boat, but they've been struggling with tuna fishing over the years, and they can't figure out a way to just get it done. And they'll come with me, and I'll change the dynamic of the trip during that one trip because I'll know what their goals are.
Correct. Not
really just catch fish. It's why.
Right.
So when I'm doing stuff on the boat, those trips, I'll stop and I'll ask them, what would you do right now? And he'd be like, I do this. And I'd be like, why? And he'd be like, oh, I don't know. And I'll be like, well, see, they just came up again over there. And he goes, yeah, I would have been long gone. I said, why? So we'll explain stuff, and I'll explain stuff to them. And then one of the guys who has actually the same, he's one of the only guys on the Cape who has the same boat as I do. He came with me, him and his wife. We ended up getting 2 fish. He had gone 2 years without catching a fish after he bought his first boat. And then he texted me a picture the following week with a fish on his boat. Based on exactly what we did when we went out that day. He went out finally and got his own. That's like rewarding. That's like tying your own fly and making your own lure and actually going to catch a fish on it. You know what I mean? What you did worked.
Yeah, it's like guiding for salmon and steelhead or trout, and someone's never done it before, and they land a quality fish. Maybe it's a small fish that they've never done before.
Right.
I mean, I enjoy guiding now, putting people, like I don't even really care to fish anymore. I enjoy it. I know you do too.
Right.
But there's something about, and it's not the same for everyone. Don't get me wrong. Like I know guys that are great fishermen that they could never just sit there and teach and watch someone else do it. That's just not them.
It's right. I'm a teacher. I like it. I had another charter guy years ago say to me, don't teach them anything. Take them out, catch them a fish, and bring them home. And I said, that doesn't work for me. It's just not who you are. It's just not who I am. Yesterday, for example, I in the morning, there was a guy below me, and this is where the plus comes in.
Sure.
For example. So this guy was below me, and I was watching him. He was using a center pin.
This is steelhead fishing.
Yeah, steelhead fishing. And he was struggling. He was really struggling. His casting, his rigging, everything, I was watching him. And I was in the middle of catching fish. I probably caught 6 fish in an hour right in front of the guy. And I said to him, and I was careful. because I didn't want to insult the guy. And I said, "Hey, do you want a hand?" I said, "Come on up here, and let me give you a hand."
You're
I
like,
was like,
bro, you're struggling right now. Like,
yeah, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to.
I
I didn't
know.
want to like throw an insult at him. I didn't want him, and he was very receptive. He didn't take it as an insult at all, and he took everything I gave him. And I walked away after that. And I set him up, and I said, "Use this, stand here, do this, and watch me." So he was using it. And within 10 minutes of me walking away, I hear a splash. I turn around, he's fighting a fish. And I was like, it worked. That was his first steelhead he ever caught. Right. So I went up to the house because we have the house on the river. I went up to the house. We came back down an hour later, and he was fighting another one. And he's like, "I got to tell you," he goes, "everything you told me, I would have never done any of this. And I was trying to figure all this out on my own." And he goes, "I wouldn't have been able to do any of this." It's so quick for us to do that.
Was he there in the afternoon when you went back down?
He was there until the sunset.
Same spot.
Same rock. He didn't move, so that's where the plus comes in, is I don't want people to think I've been labeled as a tuna fisherman. Like, that's it. I've been labeled as the tuna guy.
Which is fine.
But that's not all.
I think it's a good idea in the sense that there's probably a lot of anglers that tuna fish that want to learn what you're going to teach them or what you have available for them to learn.
Right.
But they might want to go up and steelhead fish too. Like, you're talking 6 months where there's no tuna around in the Northeast. You know what I mean?
I will help people with steelhead fishing. This is going to sound strange, but I don't want any money for it. I don't want to be paid to do it, because once I'm paid to do it, it changes the day.
Sure.
Right. You have a job to do now, and you must produce. And I don't want that. I want to fish with, a friend, somebody I know, an associate, where I can help you, and you can learn on your own.
I envision Bluefin Plus for you, and you tell me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
In your tuna off season is going to be dedicated to a lot of video and article content. And then when you're full steam, it might be a little bit more of like an intel based, like text phone call type thing.
Text phone call. I'm not going to do.
You're not going to spot burn.
Nope.
You're not going to spoon feed.
I'm not going to spoon feed.
But there might be a time when, like, hey, Matt, we're here. It's blowing 25 out of the southeast. Can you just give us like an idea of what marina to launch at?
That's,
you know what I mean?
Yes, that I'll help people with. I was off of this in 300.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they were moving. I'm not going to do the numbers thing. Right. I'm not going to spot burn. I'm not going to, because that would hurt me and my entire network of boats.
Yep.
And I'm not going to do that. I call that like selling your soul. I'll help people. Basically, the way an easy way to say it is, I'm not going to leave you hanging. That's what I'm going to say.
I think you will find Bluefin Plus where you're going to be like, okay, this was successful. In a few years, when you know a certain member or two members that fish together and you know their boat, and they've been a member for 3 years and they chat with you, whatever, and you go to find fish and they're there. And you're like, okay, they obviously listened for 3 years, and we happen to be in this, that I think
happens now.
Yeah, that's when I think it'll click, where you're like,
right.
All right, without spot burning in numbers, these guys happen to find these fish. You know what I mean?
But my goal is to help people enough where they don't need that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? They don't need my numbers.
Yeah.
They don't need me to tell them where to go or help them. They're going to be able to figure this out on their own.
They're not going to learn anything if you spoon feed them numbers. And,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, give them, hey, it's this tide, it's this moon phase,
right.
It's this wind, it's this weather, it's, you know what I mean? You're going to have fog. Don't go out of this inlet, and so on and so forth.
And I want people to learn on their own, because that's the ripping the Band-Aid off. You know what I mean? That's how they're going to learn. Like, I can only help people, just like, that phrase with a horse, you can only lead them to water.
Sure.
So they have to see the stuff that I'm explaining to them, the scenarios, they have to see and play out on their own, and they have to apply it and have it work
on the water
to see why it worked. So this isn't a quick thing where people say, what do I do? What do I look for? I can give them scenarios, but every day is different in every scenario. Like what we did that day, me and you, most people wouldn't have caught fish that day. That was a tough day.
Yeah.
You know, um, I like for
You caught fish. I ran a camera the whole time.
you ran a camera
and you drove the boat, and you gaffed the fish.
right.
I just sit there and press record.
That was a tough day. You know,
I did spot fish though, so I did feel a part of. I was like, Matt, 7 miles that way. He's like, geez, we're not going that far. I was like, all right, I'll look a little closer.
Yeah, and then Matt, there's 500 pounders 20 feet off the bow, rolling, and I'm like, they're actually too close. Like you can't cast.
They were 60 pounders, and then there was a 500 mixed in that we hooked on accident that ruined our day.
Right. You know, so I want people to. I just don't want people to make the same mistakes I did, and if people just. Now, one thing I do want to stress about Bluefin Plus is the advice that I'm giving people is based on my experiences and what works for me.
Sure.
Right. People might do things different here, might do things different there. They might rig differently, might approach different. That's great. Fine. I'm just talking about what works for me. I'm not saying this is, the right way and the only way. It's just what works for me.
So so it's evolving. It's new. Hopefully someday it grows to be exactly what you had envisioned it to.
Right now, I'm just basically trying to put my operation, Tighten Up Charters. I'm trying to put my operation online. My whole operation.
Do you have social media?
Yes, it's on.
Are you on Instagram? Under what? Is it under Bluefin Plus?
Bluefin Plus.
And you're on Facebook?
Yes.
And then what's the website?
Bluefinplus.com.
Bluefinplus.com.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, be on the lookout for that. And that will evolve, like Matt said. And we'll touch base on that a little bit later. But I want to get into last year's season, which I did not experience with you, versus years prior, and then maybe what you expect for this season. And I only ask that because a few things. Like when I first started following your page, because you had been tagging Cortland, and I'm like, who is this guy? Like, he's running our C16. What's going on? Mm-hmm. Like, your content was just insane. Like, raging bluefin on the surface, bait balls everywhere. Like, you were just smoking them, absolutely smoking them. And then that year I went with you, it was the same thing. And then last year, tuna season came around. It was like late July or August. And I called you and I was like, hey, what the fuck's your problem? Do you not like me anymore? And you're like, what are you talking about? I was like, bro, we talk every day on the phone. You haven't called me in 2 weeks. You're like, it's been rough. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like the wind? He's like, no, these fish are just being much more different this year than they ever have in the past. So what I wanted to get into is, like, you and I went to a trade show, Castafari, a couple months ago. Yep. And you did a presentation with Damon Sacco, who runs the show, Mark DeCavia, who's out of Long Island, a great charter captain out of Long Island. And your presentation segment was about this, like, anomaly body of water that was making the fish do something different. And you pulled up your graph of that chart of water temps. So, like, what was different about that? And not that you didn't get them, it was just different, and it was much harder, because you told me it was harder. What was different last year about, every year is different, but what set up last year that made the season trickier and much different than any other thing in the past? Like, what was the main thing going on? Like, it just, like, again, we would chat on the phone. You're like, yep, hook 2 today, hook 3, got whatever. And last year was like, dude, this is a grind right now.
It was, it was an interesting year. These. So 2 years ago, we had this huge pile of fish show up. Like, it was just around July 1st, and then they stuck around for a couple weeks, and then they vanished. Last year, they showed up like June 20th. I'd almost be willing to bet it was the same pile of fish that, transatlantic fish come back and forth. And then they showed up June 20th, and they were there. That pile of fish stayed. So there was one pile of fish off the backside, and I think it was the same pile that was there all year long. It was probably 5,000 fish in this school. And they just moved up and down the beach, all year long. They go 3 miles down, they go out a little bit, they come back up. But the southern area, no, when I mean southern, I don't mean south of the Cape, I mean southeast. That was, we had this body of cold water that set up last year. And, it was cold.
Like, too cold.
It was cold. We had 47 degrees in August 47-degree water in August. Like we could see our breath on the way out.
Can you feel that when you're running from
Holy
land
shit,
into
can
that area?
The fog is dense as can be because it's got that ice cold water basically
Warm air temps.
hitting
Yeah.
these 80-degree water temperatures. And Nantucket is typically known for colder water, east of it. But this stretched.
What is that? Is it just the way that the
It's just-
Gulf Stream kind
Yeah,
of
it's just the way
pockets
it
that in there?
sets up. I mean, it's you have basically a southwest wind, which is your predominant
Correct.
wind, in the winter or in the summer, and that's the northeast side of Nantucket.
Yep.
I don't know exactly why that cold water sets up there, but that's why our fluke fishing so good, on the shoals. But that cold water stretched all the way from Chatham, southeasterly down to the canyons, and then around the southern end of Nantucket. And if you look at that on a map, from any direction a bluefin comes from, either east or south
to north, right?
you're gonna no, most of the time they come from the east. People. I mean, again, learning tuna, what they do is an ever evolving circus that we deal with on a year-to-year basis. But coming from the south, a lot of them do come from the south, but the majority of them come from the east. And I know that from spotter planes,
Sure.
and boats and stick boats. And when those fish come from the east, they're going to hit that cold water, and they're not going to go above it. They're just going to keep following that edge, and they're going to end up in Rhode Island or south of the Vineyard or south of Nantucket. The fish that find a way to get above it, they're just going to either hang out at the Cape, or they're just going to go north up to Maine, New Hampshire, PEI.
Yep.
So that body of cold water acted like this fence. That's my take on it.
It makes sense to me.
2 years ago, we had the same type of setup, and I looked over the past 3 years, and from 2021, 22, 23, that body of cold water has been getting bigger, and this is, against basically mainstream media, what they're saying.
Right.
But this body of water this cold water has been getting bigger and bigger
It's
and bigger
a
and
pocket
bigger.
that's growing.
Right.
Because you were showing me those charts from like 2-3 years ago. It was there, but it wasn't
pronounced.
It wasn't pronounced east and west as much as it was like there was a gap off of Monomoy out X number of miles where it was comfortable temps for them to move through.
They can move through. Right?
And now it's like shoved right up against.
And it's
the beach.
It's 100 miles wide, so bait doesn't want to go in there. We caught them last year on the edge of it, but it was far, it was cold, it was foggy, it was all those things you don't want to do. The Cape is notorious. It's a great place because we typically don't have to go far.
Right.
When people think of bluefin tuna, they think of, you're going far, you're way offshore. That's what's so unique about the Cape is you don't have to go far.
The tuna species are interesting in the sense that like your yellowfin and your big eyes, which are typically like much smaller than bluefin as far as like their max size. Those fish are typically, maybe 40 miles at close, but big eyes being way farther out in the canyons. You'd think those would be closer to shore and your giant bluefin would be further out. It's the complete opposite.
Right.
Like when I first met you at your house in Cape Cod, you're like, see this out back, and we're kind of looking towards Provincetown. You go, last year there was 1,000-pounders crashing bait right there.
Yeah.
I was like,
30 feet.
how'd you know? You go, I woke up, I looked out the door. You know what I mean? And they're 1,000-pound fish just blowing up.
Yeah.
And that's just, to me, it seems like it would be the opposite.
You know why? Because they need the food, right? So you have a fish that travels its entire life.
Yeah.
It never stops. So tuna are so unique because they can change their body temperature up to 30 degrees either way, higher or lower.
Warm-blooded, correct?
And they're warm-blooded, right? So they're the only fish that's warm-blooded. All fish tend to be cold-blooded. So when you bring a tuna onto the boat, you can put your hand on it. It's actually warm. It's hot, like a human.
Is that typically why a commercial fish that you would bring and sell, is that why they swim them behind the boat? I know that's why they pack them down with ice, but they need to do that instantly so that meat is not basically burned up. Like it will cook itself.
Remember in school, we used to have to run the mile.
I do not.
You don't?
No, keep going.
They used to have to run the mile, and your gym teacher always used to tell you, all right, now jog,
Cool
and
down.
cool yourself
Sure.
down. That's what you're doing to a tuna. So you're cooling it down. Like you're a hunter, right? For example, you don't want to kill a deer when it's hot.
Right.
When a deer's in the middle of a run, and he's been running, she's been running, you don't want to shoot a deer right there and kill it or double lung it.
You got to deal with it if you do.
You would deal with it because that's a hot animal.
Yep.
All the lactic acid is built up. So you want them relaxed. It's the same with a tuna.
Interesting.
You want to kill them, but you want them to cool down. So that's why they'll bleed them when they're swimming them. So you'll take the dart off the end of the harpoon, it's in the fish, and then you just have, your harpoon. You'll see the guys using the end of the harpoon, and they'll be poking their gills while they're swimming them. So as the fish is cooling off, it's pumping itself out and
Yep.
doesn't know it.
And then it's packed with ice.
Then you pack it with ice, per the regulations, that's why a lot of guys take the gills out, but they leave the head on.
Sure.
So once you take the gills out, you can clean the cavity out.
Correct.
And you could pack it with ice.
Do they do that as far as taking the gills out and leaving the fish whole because it's close to being at minimum length?
It could be, yes.
Like you catch a 115-inch tuna, you could probably take the head off and it'd still be 73 inches.
It's a giant.
Okay.
But there's a measurement that,
they know
supposedly,
Yeah.
but we've done this measurement and it's not accurate. We've done it. So they take the front of the pectoral fin and then they measure back to the inside of the tail. And I think they multiply it by 1.35. And that's supposed to give you the measurement
head
of
length,
head
gill
length. Right.
Got it.
I've done that with fish, recreational sized fish in the 65-inch range, and it was off by 3 inches.
Which is not good.
It's not good. I mean, that's a big, big difference.
Yeah.
So
that's a big ticket too, by the way.
Right. So there's a little bit more regulation on the tuna than there used to be, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think it should be more regulated.
I mean, just in my time working at Cortland, for commercial fishing, it's gone from 4 fish to 1 or 3 to 1.
It changes.
I mean, it changes every year and it does season to season. But I remember the first time, and I know you love the show Wicked Tuna as a joke, but they used to keep 3 or 4 a day.
Yeah.
And now it's 1.
Well,
So, I mean, in regulations, because you're saying these fish swim from, North Carolina, Prince Edward Island to the Mediterranean Sea
Right.
and back. And there's different laws for every single region
Every
that those
single
fish.
region.
So like, I'm happy in the sense that we have these regulations because it seems to be working.
And you know what? I see a lot of changes in the fishery because I think people and fishermen are learning too. So I've watched a difference, almost an evolution in the industry where people aren't running over everybody else's lines. They're behaving around
Sure.
feeds. Not behaving, that's not the right term.
No, sort of.
They're being polite.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it used to be a war zone out there 5, 6, 7 years ago. Like what we had on that jig bite 2 years ago, that could have been a mess out there.
Yeah.
But everybody behaved. It was shocking. One thing I think people need to do focus a little bit more on is the targeting fish that are well beyond your capabilities
I agree.
with
The gear,
the
gear.
the lighter tackle.
Yeah. You can go out and hook a 1,000-pound fish on a steelhead setup if you wanted to, but that's not a good idea.
Just like those fish that were in front of my place,
Yeah.
right? I could have hooked those on topwater plugs all day long.
And
I never in a million years would do it.
no, well, you wouldn't land them. One,
Nope, I wouldn't land them. You'd kill the fish.
you would kill them.
Those fish are 25 years old.
There is definitely something about ethics in terms of the gear and the technology that we have per the fish size, especially on non-commercial days. You know
Right,
what I mean? Where it's
right.
like, yes, if it's a commercial day, could you take that fish? Yes, you could. But if it's a non-commercial day, do you really want to target a 1,000-pound fish on a spin gear setup and fight it for X number of hours? You know what I mean?
It's the same reason why you wouldn't go elephant hunting with a 22,
Sure,
or you wouldn't go king salmon fishing with your Snoopy rod.
sure,
You know what I mean? Use the gear that's appropriate.
sure.
And I have so much respect for these fish. that I've actually changed my view on what we should do and how we should do them, and keep them and catch them over the years.
Sure.
I'm not a big fan of the regulations. I don't think we should be allowed 3 unders and 1 over.
Like
I think there's just way too much
You
meat.
said that when we fished, like you would take clients and it'd be like 2 guys and you'd catch 65-inch fish and they wanted to keep it. You're like, all right, good. And they're like, all right, let's go get another one. And you go, guys,
and another one. And
do you know
another
how
one,
much
and another
meat
one.
is in this fish that you were either going to have to give away or it's going to go bad in your freezer?
Well, I got friends and family.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the excuse.
That's
right?
and I said to some guys, like, you're going to drive around your town,
That's
you're going to hand deliver tuna?
That's what I did.
That's what you did. And I guarantee you still had leftovers.
That's what I did when you let me keep the one that we got together. Is I cleaned that thing, I iced it down, and I drove around for 2 days and dropped off tuna steaks.
And you had tuna left over.
And I still had tuna left over, and I did stuff with it, and I ate the whole thing. And I'm the same way with deer. If I'm gonna kill something, I'm eating the whole damn thing.
And you got the whole fish because I had some already, and that was a small fish.
Yeah,
that was only a 58-inch fish.
I was gonna say it was like maybe 60 pounds.
Right.
Not
so
even.
you probably only had 50, 60 pounds of meat.
Yeah. It's a lot.
And you're given, so when I say to people, do you want any tuna? They expect you to bring this little chunk over there like this.
Right.
And you go over there with this bag and they're like, what are we going to do with all this? And you'd be like, well, how do you think I feel? I have 18 times this.
Yeah.
And what I do is I tell these guys, a lot of guys, they want to keep everything. And I say, listen, you guys live local, right? If you guys want any more tuna and you guys eat all this, you call me. And I'll give you whatever you need. Okay. If you run out of this, and they never run out of it.
Right.
I don't know. I have a ton of respect for these fish. I try to find them as hard as I can, as quick as I can, get them to the boat. I try to release as many as I can. I haven't sold a giant in 2 years. They were, prices were in, $1.60 a pound.
Yeah, they suck.
And I'm like, I can't sell this fish. It's 25 years old. For basically less than what cat food costs us.
Right.
And I was like, I know it's going to happen. And I know they're going to be sold anyway.
Yep.
I don't
want
to contribute to it. I don't want to sell them because if I'm selling them, my charters now become about that tuna that I have to sell. Room is taken up on the boat. The fish has to be iced. We have to concentrate on that. And then those guys can't keep a recreational fish after that.
Right.
For the day. So now,
once you keep a commercial fish, you're done. You're done.
So with the charter head boat category, we're allowed to keep recreational fish and keep giants. We're allowed to be commercial also, but we can't do it on the same day.
Got it.
So if a small fish, say we start the day off, we come up to a feed, we bring a 50-inch fish into the boat. Now we're recreational for the day. That's it. And if we come up and we get a 74-inch fish, and we happen to keep it, now we're commercial for the day.
You're done at that point.
We're done. We can keep fishing.
Right.
But up to the commercial limit at that time, whatever it might be, that's what I can keep for the day. But my goal at the end of the day is to make my clients as happy as possible. And I want them to have the best day. Me making an extra $1,000 a day, but possibly selling a fish, that doesn't do as much for me as them coming back year after year after year, scratching stuff off their bucket lists. That's what I want to do, So if people want to do a giant, if they want to catch a giant, then fine, let's go catch a giant. But I'll base it on what you guys want to do.
They can't even keep the fish anyways if you catch a giant.
No.
You know what I mean? So like there's
think that they
there's a lot of rules and regulations when it comes to commercial tuna fishing that your average guy that's even like that. I ask you these questions all the time because I'm into it.
Well,
you know what I mean?
We'll go over that one too because like the wicked tuna you said has completely changed a lot of the people who aren't in this industry all the time aware of what the price of these tuna actually is.
Sure. Which they did that presentation at Castafari. Who did that? The guy that's at the end of the show that does like the 3 hour.
I wasn't there.
It's like the Bluefin, like Atlantic, like the guy is like
Brad. From
yes, he's a scientist.
NMFS.
He's great, and he said the average price of bluefin last year was $4 to $9. It's between
$4 to $9.
$4 to $9 a pound,
and that's not average.
Yeah,
so you're more at the lower end of that spectrum
all the time. The $9 fish are coming in like November, December,
and that's one out of
Correct.
100.
Correct.
But I mean, from a buyer's perspective, it makes sense. So if you were a fish buyer and you started offering $1 a pound and you had boats lined up around the marina to sell you the fish,
and you're flipping that for
the same money that you were making when you were paying them $4 a pound, why you
sure.
It's if the fish stopped coming to you, yeah, then adjust your price. But if you're paying these people this
And they're lined up,
then I don't spite them for it.
I know.
So I mean, a lot of the times these people, I see it all the time on social media where people are like, oh, if you catch a giant, is the trip for free? And we almost laugh at that. I don't bring people out to catch fish. I'm not a meat locker. If you want fish, just go spend the money and buy the fish at a market rather than hiring me. You're hiring me for an experience. That's what I want to take people on, right? I'm not making a bunch of money. I had a lady almost try to sue me a couple of years back. She just assumed she was getting a check for half the price of this fish. And I sent her the copy of the receipt for the fish, and she called me a liar. She goes, I didn't expect to get the truth out of you anyway. She said, all my friends said that was $20,000
Didn't you
fish.
send her the regulations where it says federally it's illegal to
profit
the customer to profit off the sale of a commercial
Correct.
fish?
That's why, guys will give you a discount on next year's charter. If you
and she went away after that.
Yeah, she didn't comment. She said, I'm going to leave you a bad review on every one of your platforms. I said, that's fine. And I was like, I'll post this entire conversation as a reply to your review. I'm not out there to screw anybody.
Sure.
I just don't sell a lot of giants because I don't target a lot of giants. Sure. And, the price of giants doesn't really, warrant that. The whole, if we catch a fish is a trip for free thing. You're coming for the experience. PEI is a catch and release fishery. They built their entire charter industry around catch and release. So you're going up there, you're targeting giant bluefin tuna, which this isn't a fish that you go down the street and catch.
No.
Right? It takes a lot of gear, effort, time, research, and money to catch this fish. And we actually caught 2 that day with that lady and the guy. We caught 2 that day, and she was upset about it. And we caught 2 in a 3-hour period. I charged her for a bass trip, and I gave her a free bass trip next year also. And that still wasn't good enough. And I thought that was more than fair.
Yeah.
So you're paying for the experience, just like if you went to Great Adventure, you're not going to ask to bring the roller coaster home. You know what I mean? You paid for the adventure to go on the roller coaster.
What is your expectations of this season coming up?
I have no idea.
It is. I knew you would say that, but I figured I'd put you on the spot.
Because these things have thrown... My expectations is I'm going to start looking for fish around June 15th to June 20th.
I was going to say, so by the time this show airs, it'll be May sometime. And I was chatting with your friend, Tyler McAllister, who runs a stick boat, harpoon boat.
Yep.
And those guys typically, like, he'll go out around in June with spotter.
June 1st.
June 1st is when that opens.
Yes.
And he goes out with spotter planes. And that's typically when you probably chat with him like, hey, I saw this, I saw that.
Well, June 1st opens for commercial, period.
Got it.
Rod and reel, commercial, anything commercial.
Got it.
He'll go out and he'll look around and he'll have the plane, come back and tell him what he sees. But there's fish are usually far.
Yeah.
And then what helps me a lot is the lobster guys. So the lobster guys will tell me, the scallop guys will tell me what they're seeing out there. But these fish that showed up last year and the year before, there was no sign of them. Say, for example, June 19th, there was none.
Yeah, and then you said the next day it was...
They were everywhere. Like overnight, this armada, this gigantic school of fish came in from the east. Now, this is why I was telling you they come from the east, because if those fish came from the south, the guys would have seen them in the vineyard. They would have seen them in
you would have
Nantucket.
known they were kind of coming.
They would have seen them, coming up the east side of the Cape. They would have seen them in Chatham. And these fish showed up at the tip of Provincetown.
Right. So they avoided all that, which means they came from the east.
And then they just came in from the deep, and they were everywhere. I'm only basing this upcoming year's theory on arrival based on the last 2 years. That's all I can base it on. That's it. These fish are head scratchers. I mean, they've driven us nuts over the years because, their goal in life, these fish, is basically to eat and spawn. That's basically all it is. Every day they're looking for bait, more and more bait. That's all they're looking for.
I'll know it's a good season when you call me every day through July. But when you blank me for 14 days, I'm not going to call you because you were angry.
Well, it's just like,
yo, what's going on? You're like, how the fuck do you think it's going?
it's just like our radios. If our radios are quiet, we're doing good. If our radios are constantly, we're talking to each other,
people are trying to find.
We're trying to find them. So when everybody goes radio quiet, we're doing good. And usually we're radio quiet because we're right all near each other anyway. I'll start looking around at the end, mid to end of June, but that's not going to be
like you're ready to go in case it happens by the mid to end of June.
Yeah, and I do think it's going to. And if it happens, get to the Cape, and there's like a 2-week period. Or it should be crazy.
We'll bring Nate this time because Nate's actually way stronger than I am.
Nate, have you ever targeted saltwater fish?
Yeah, but nothing.
Tarpon.
Just like tarpon fishing in the Keys, and
okay.
Hopefully Nate can last longer than 2 minutes on a rod with a tuna.
I handed him the rod. He goes, dude, stop handing me rods with bluefin on them. He goes, take this rod back.
We had to call another guy over. The big one that we eventually lost about 40 minutes into the fight. I think I was on the rod for 5 minutes.
This was a small reel too.
Yeah, it was not intended for the fish that ate the.
It was a 14K reel. I wish we had an 18 or a 20K reel on. The rod was completely fine. The rigging was fine. That was only 60-pound test, so it was light.
Yeah,
for that fish, and we didn't see the fish prior to him eating the hoagie. We just saw the splash. When the lure landed, I saw the swirl because he was going after the lure. When I saw the swirl, I was like, oh boy.
By swirl, it was a crater in the ocean.
It was a hole in the ocean. The swirl was half the size of this room.
And then 40 minutes in, we called one of Matt's buddies. He's like, can you drop someone off and help us, please?
Because I'm driving. And
I'm worthless, and he's driving.
And the fish is vertical at that point. So that's the hardest part of the fight because it just eats your back up.
So anyways, we'll have to bring Nate. Nate runs the entire braided line fishing department here at Cortland. So he'd be a good guy to. It is awesome when you're able to apply what you work on every day to a scenario like that, because we use braid, striped bass, largemouth, small. But when you apply it to like one of the strongest fish in the ocean, you appreciate what you come to every day in this office, in this plant, because you just put that to the test against the strongest thing in the world, and you got to do it, firsthand. So maybe things will pan out.
When you can get gunnels ripped off the side of a boat. That's only happening because of your line that's in between that fish and that boat. That's how impressive that line is, So when you can see me splice 18 inches up the C16 with like 200-pound top shot, and I'm only going 18 inches up, and it's holding 800-pound fish. That shows you the capabilities of the C16 being able to grab. Only with one serve on it too. So
we can get into gear talk right now. I was gonna but long-winded answer. Thank you for that. I had a couple other topics here, but I know we got to move along. But gear talk is one of the things that we just like barely hit on last time, and I think that it would help some of the listeners out there that follow you that want to know like what you're using and what. So I'll ask you kind of a laundry list of gear, and just kind of roll through like what's your go-to. All right.
Sure.
So what is your favorite brand of underwear when you charter, Captain? Like what is your go-to?
What do I wear? Hanes.
Oh, Matt's wife Crystal's in the background here. Okay. All right. I'm just kidding. All right. So rods, right? You got bait rods. You got top water rods. You got jig rods.
Yep.
What is your brand of rod? are there different series in that brand of rod?
Yep.
And like, so like, what are you using for that whole setup?
I use all ZCR, Zach's Custom Rods. He's out of Westport, Massachusetts. I've worked with him for 5 years now. We've designed these blanks around the bluefin tuna fishing, and I think we've basically nailed it. Where
He makes
everything
from start to finish
in
Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts, all American made blanks. They're made right here in this country. They're woven on the mandrels or everything. They're shipped over to him. He makes them to your specifications, length, acid wrapped, colors, everything. Zach gives a lifetime warranty on all the tuna rods. I mean, that's unheard of.
Sure.
For a fish that is known to break everything it encounters, and he's offering you a lifetime warranty. And the reason he gives you a lifetime warranty is we've never broken one. You know, he knows he's not going to have to worry about it.
So he's doing them all, the big conventionals for 130 wides, right down to
the 80 130s, the bent butts, the trolling rods, the stand-up rods.
And he'll make rods based on what you as an angler want for components on them. Like if you say,
he'll recommend.
I want a bent butt versus a Winthrop, adjustable butt.
Right. He'll recommend what, the industry has told him, that they want. But, to each personal preference, that's where the custom rod comes in. It's not so, I hear a lot of guys, they talk about other custom rod builders and they're like, oh, he built a great rod. He built a great rod. But what is he building it on? The blank is what's more important than anything.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You could put a Ferrari wrap over a Volkswagen Bug. It's not going to turn it into a Ferrari.
Still going to be a piece of shit.
Right. So the blank is what the most important part of that whole thing is,
But he can tailor it to like aesthetics, cosmetics, the way you want it. Like if you have a pink offshore boat and you want all your rods to be
you know what he did for me?
He can do all that.
So two of my giant rods, my 80 130s, he redid them for me. He had Onslow Bay send him the exact paint that is on my hull
for the rods.
And he painted the blanks to match the hull color by Onslow Bay. That's the dedication that this guy has to his brand. He had another big customer who had a 92 Viking. He had a certain teak on his boat. He wanted his rods, his 120 rods set. 120 rods, a set, to match the teak wood grain on his boat. Zach found a way, I don't know how he did it, never asked him, but he found a way to put right above the foregrip, there's like a 3-inch band of the exact wood grain of the teak on that boat to wrap around the rod. And then he had the boat lettering on it. But all that aside, it's customer service, his attention to detail, and they're just some of the most badass rods.
Quality.
And that's what it is.
And they're all made in Massachusetts.
They're all made in Massachusetts, local guy.
What is it? Zach's Custom Rods?
Yeah. Zach's Custom Rods, ZCR. You can go on to Bluefin Plus, you can find them. Zach's all over Instagram. You can find them on my website too. Anything on Tighten Up Charters on my Instagram feed is always tagged with Zach's Rods. If anything you see me in any media platform, you see me or my operation, the rod is a Zach's. I mean, I've been using it for so long. All top quality stuff, and I have no reason to go anywhere else. I love supporting local people.
Sure. So rods, line we know.
Yep.
Because you wouldn't be here.
Right.
Reels. So you have conventional reels, jigging reels, popping. Like there's a difference. Like sure, you're using a spin reel for popping and spin reel for jigging. Are there differences? What's your brand of reel like for the kind of the whole setup?
My brand is I have Daiwa, I have Shimano, and I have Ali Technos. So the Ali Technos are the smaller reels, really compact. They're great stand-up rods for giants.
Didn't we troll with an Ali Technos?
Yeah, little silver ones. Very deep spools. Incredible amounts of drag on them. They're expensive.
What are your spin reels?
Spin reels are Daiwa and Shimano.
What?
Daiwa Saltiga.
Yep.
Daiwa Certate, which is one under, the top of the line.
Sure.
For both of them is your Shimano Stella and your Daiwa Saltiga. And then under that, you have like your Daiwa Certate, and then you have your Shimano Twin Power, which is right under the Stella, and then below that is the Saragossa. The fish that we hooked was on a Saragossa, and it was on a 14,000. So it was on the smaller end of, I don't say cheap, I say it's the more economical.
Those reels are great.
They're great
all
for
of
the
them are.
money.
Correct.
You know, that's one thing. If you're doing it, you know, you're targeting giants all the time, it's not a reel I would recommend.
Sure.
But they're great for the money.
And then what are your giant reels?
They're Shimano Tiagras, 80 wides.
80s. Oh, do you ever run 130s?
No, I don't see the need.
Always 80s is max you'll go. And you run 200-pound C16 on your 80s?
200-pound C16. All the specs that, you know, you ever read about, I just find them to be either inaccurate or, you know, what they're basing the capacity on can be different. I have just around 1,000 yards of 200 on my 80s, and then I have a top shot of 130 moi moi.
And you typically you run shorter top shots than most.
I run
correct?
like 100 to 150 yards.
And is that so that you can get more braid capacity on it? Because mono will take up more capacity than hollow core that lays flat.
I'm not that worried about capacity because I have 3,000 feet of braid on there. You know, that's over half a mile. No, I do it because I change the mono out a lot.
I got you.
You know, I'll change the mono out 2-3 times a year.
So you're scrapping less mono,
correct,
than someone who would be running a longer top shot.
And it's cheaper to replace it all the time,
especially at that length. But yes,
at that length, you know. And then the C16. I mean, what did we say? We're about 6 years now. On the five or not the new stuff.
Yes, on the 200 C16, I think you were 6 years in with the same line on the same reel, and I think you were over 100 on commercial size fish in that kind of category on that particular line.
Well, there was one reel we had 27 giants in 3 days.
Yes.
So that's one reel, 27 giants, 3 days.
Matt was talking about that 18-inch splice. And he was like, hey, this needle, like, I'm having trouble going up inside the hollow core. And I was like, well, how old is he? He goes, 6 years old. And he's like, I have over 100 fish on it. I was like, listen, our hollow core lasts a long time. You're pushing. He goes, I'll try this 18-inch splice and see if it works. And that
was the 27 fish in 3 days.
And you caught 27 more fish on it. So that's the benefit of, you know, I'm not gonna just promo Cortland here, but obviously this is our podcast. But high quality, the best quality hollow core in the world.
The problem was it was flat. So what happened is it had so many fish on it for so many years with salt packed up, stretched out, is I couldn't get the needle up. And then the minute the needle would go up, it would bind. So I had to go up it with 100-pound needle to open it.
And then get it.
And then get it up. So I got the mono up as far as I could. I served it. I attached it. I pulled. It didn't budge. I was like, I'm going to run it. And I had a group from California. We were offshore with this insane bite. And we had a whole bait well full of mackerel. We would drop a mackerel to the bottom. It would go off. And we'd reel in a 400 or 500-pound fish, 10, 15 minutes. I would unhook it, put another mackerel on, drop it right back to the bottom, and it would go off again. And we did that for 3 days straight, you know, to the point where I was like, God, please, I don't want any more mackerel in this boat. You know, like, so the third day we were out, they're like, we need more mackerel. I was like, no, we don't. I was like, we have like 10, we're good. And that was on one rod, one hook, all 3 days.
So my point was like, the benefit of that super high quality hollow core is you will never even approach that year span with a lesser.
And then we're trying to figure out, like, I almost want to use it. We were talking about, Brooks is like, maybe let's just keep using it until something happens.
I told him I'd pay for whatever messed up if it happened, but I said keep using.
We're just going to keep using it until let's
see how long it can.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So you can buy cheap hollow core, and you will most likely need to continue to replace that after a lot of fish, even after a year or after 2 years, because resplicing that is impossible. 18 inches isn't even into the question, right? So over time, you will actually spend less money through Cortland C16 than you would for a cheaper hollow core that's just going to get beat up on. I mean, there's times when, I'll work with tackle shops where a less expensive hollow core won't even make it to the following year. And they'll say, oh, it's salt packed, it got stretched out. Like, that's not what ours does. You know what I mean? So that's what I wanted to bring Nate so he could see, like, dude, this line's been on this reel for 6 years.
We want to see what's going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? We want to see where we can go.
We'll put it in our showcase if we can get it to go over 8 years. Or
It'll go over 8 years.
So,
you know what? A lot of the time, it doesn't even make it down to it. You know what I mean? So, like, some of the biggest fish I caught, just, teetering right around 1,000 pounds. They didn't even make it halfway down the spool. So, like, the bottom of that spool has never been touched in 6 years. So who knows what that line looks like?
we'll flip it.
Does the water get all the way down to the bottom of the spool?
If you wet pack that,
That spool is so tight down
if
there.
you wet pack that originally and that doesn't see the light of day from fish, I doubt that water will penetrate that many layers of hollow core over time.
I mean, that's got to be, you're talking about almost 3 inches.
If it's done correctly,
right?
Which the majority of the tackle shops in the Northeast will. There's a reason why when I go into tackle shops and half the reels in there are from California to be spooled and spliced, because the way they do it up here is like, it is perfect, and that's how it's done. So, all right, so that's line, that's reels, that's rods, hard baits.
Mm-hmm.
What are you running for that? Swim baits, hard baits, not soft plastics. Like, what's your go-to?
Jason, siren
lures. Yeah. Are there particular styles that you like, or?
Now everybody has their own. I mean, Jason's been in the industry for a while now. Makes one of the most dynamite top water baits you can buy. You're gonna pay for them. They're expensive, but there's a reason why. It's a finely tuned lure based on years of fishing experiences, and it's all.
Where are they based out of?
Jason's out of Duxbury, Massachusetts. So they're all made.
Is he?
Yeah.
He doesn't, because he calls me once in a while. It doesn't sound like he's from
from New Zealand.
Oh, he's from New Zealand?
Yeah.
I was like, bro, you got a weird Massachusetts accent.
No, he's from New Zealand. And he came over here a bunch of years ago. And he started making lures. And over the years, talking to the charter guys, using lures on his own. And, through trial and error, he's got this, finely tuned machine where, I've caught a lot of fish in a lot of scenarios that those fish shouldn't have been caught. These fish were, I had guys in the front of the boat, and I don't cast a whole lot on my charters because I want them to have the opportunities. And these guys kept casting one day over and over and over again with these big standard tuna lures, high-end lures, high-end Japanese stuff. And I said, guys, come on, just look at the scenario. Look at the way this day's playing out. It's greasy calm. It's bluebird skies. The fish are one here, one there, and you're casting these big giant plugs in them. I go, why don't you downsize a little bit? Let's cast something a little bit smaller, something more unique. They said, no. I said, all right. So these fish came up again. They fire these huge giant lures out front, and they don't hook up. And I saw one fish behind the boat, and I snuck around. I fired this one siren out the back of the boat, and the fish grabbed it. I was like, oh, shit, I'm tight. And I didn't want to tell them. I was like, all right, guys, I got one on back here. They didn't even know I cast, but, could it have been a perfectly placed cast? Maybe.
Yeah.
But, when that happens 20, 30 times a year, you know what I mean?
Sure.
There's a reason why, So Jason's got, probably my go-tos with him are the Bolt and the Antidote 130. Those are my two models that I like the best.
I call those hard baits.
Those are hard
is
baits.
that the technical term?
Stick baits. Hard baits.
So what, I only know this because we caught our fish on what I would call a soft bait, soft plastic. Like, what's your go-to for that style?
The Hoagie.
The Hoagie.
Hoagie Pro Tail.
Is there a certain color size that you...
The bone. So the Pro Tail is made in... off the top of my head, I'd probably say somewhere in the vicinity 6 or 7 colors, maybe. Various sizes, various weights. I'm more of the 5.5 inch or the 6.5 inch in 3, 4, 5, and 6 ounce.
And that's a paddle tail.
Paddle tail,
right?
Right. Paddle tail weight built
And that's
into
what
it.
we caught ours on. It was a
Correct.
5.5.
The bone color.
I remember because those fish were eating butterfish,
Yep.
which is a very unique bait to try to match.
Pain in the ass.
It looks like a small chrome panfish. Like not much looks like that in terms of soft plastic.
And they move very unique.
Correct.
Too. That's what makes them difficult to fish around, because most bait fish will just scatter and they'll keep swimming. Bait fish, butterfish won't do that. They'll just like get out of the way of the tuna and they'll circle back around and stay right there again. So it's hard to imitate, because if that bait fish doesn't flee or swim away, your lure doing the same thing doesn't look like what a butterfish would do. So it's a hard bait to imitate. One of the ways I've been able to fool them when they're on butterfish is actually use one of the biggest lures I could find, because I'm trying to imitate what else is eating the butterfish, and you'll switch that tuna's like a light switch in their brain to almost to create a reaction strike out of that. Just like, I mean, I don't know if do trout do that?
Yeah.
Like if a trout,
when they're locked in on stuff, it's pretty hard to get them unlocked on that. Like if they're going to eat a dry fly,
you're not going to get them on a streamer,
it's
right?
pretty, yeah. I mean, are there scenarios? Yes, absolutely. I never rule out anything anymore in my experience of fishing for everything, since I've been alive. But
that's what you have to do with the butterfish, and you got to hit them on the head.
Yep.
I know. I've had a lot of days play out where I've had guys that know what they're doing in the front of the boat, and they put these casts out there, and I see where their cast lands, and I'm like, nope. And I'm watching. And on any normal, if they were on sand eels or small mackerel or something, yeah, those would have been great casts. Sure. But just because of the way the butterfish react to being chased, those won't work. And then we were doing a promotional video like 3 years ago, and I'm in the back of the boat and I'm watching the secondary feed come up, which is what I call so when you run up to a feed, the guys run up in the front of the boat, and then the fish will go down. They typically go down. People think that the boat scares them. What we've come to determine is that they don't really go down because of the boat. They don't care about the boat.
I experienced that. They do not care about the boat.
They don't care about the boat. They care about the RPM pitch change in the water. So when you're racing up to them at 5,000 RPMs, those motors are screaming under the water. And then you come down to 0 RPMs. Now it's silent, right? That's a huge change in decibels in the water. And those fish don't know what to make of it. So they stop and they move. Like some of the biggest feeds that we've seen ever come up have been when we're fighting a fish, and then they come up 5 feet from the boat. They don't care that the boat's there.
Because your RPMs are at the same.
Yes, and nothing's changed. So they don't even know you're there, or they don't even care you're there. So the secondary feed, like I was saying, is that feed will initially go down. Those people will cast, and I'll wait in the back of the boat with my bail clicked over, finger on the line, and I'm waiting for that first fish to pop up for the second time. That's the one you want to cast on, because the feed hasn't even started yet. So you're putting your bait or your lure in there before it starts. And those are the scenarios where, yes, if you come up to a butterfish feed, and they don't go crazy on those feeds, like you see them jumping, smashing, and crashing all over the place. They're more of a slow slurp when they're doing that type of feed, because they're feeding on those fish the exact way that those fish are running from them. Slow and stupid, so they're feeding the exact same way. Sand eels, when they're eating sand eels, they're chaotic, because the sand eels are like lightning fast. Yep. When they're eating half beaks, they're even crazier, because half beaks are so fast.
I witnessed that.
Right.
That was on another level.
And those fish have they're on they look like little crackheads. They're so fast. They're almost hard to target, so
I like talking about baits with Matt. I remember when we caught our fish together, it was on a Hoagie Pro Tail, 5.5 inch in the bone color.
Both of them were.
Both of them. And on our way home, Matt called Crystal. It's like, yeah, we could interview Crystal too, because she probably listens to your bullshit so much that she could just repeat everything you're saying today. And she's like, what'd you get it on? Matt's like, a Pro Tail. She goes, oh, the 5.5 incher. Like she knew what size we were throwing. And I started dying laughing. He's like, what's so funny? I was like, just the fact that your wife knows the different bait sizes that you throw all day.
Oh, she's good. She's the backbone of the business. I mean, I always say I'm just a horse in front of the cart, and she's the one behind whipping me, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like if this chartering, because chartering is hard work. People tell me I have the job. You got the best job in the world. And they have no idea what it takes to do this job. It's such a tough job to do. And I've told her from day one, I said, if this ever gets in the middle of our family, I'll shut the whole thing down. Like, I'll be done with it because I'm not going to compromise my family.
She does put up with a lot of bullshit from you.
She does. I mean, most good wives do. You know what I mean?
That's why the bulk of
charter
like
captains are single?
hardcore fishermen are divorced?
Yeah. Because I think it's because they don't.
That was a joke, but I'm kind of not joking too.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but when I first started dating,
single or divorced, I should say
dating her, and not dating, getting serious about her, it was I had to change my habits because I would fish every day.
Fishing habits.
Yes, I would fish every day. Every day I would fish, and I had to compromise.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm not changing. I'm just compromising. Where you get that certain day where you're like, I see the way the day is going.
Yeah.
I see the way the house is. I really want to go out today, but I'm not gonna.
I'm experiencing that.
Ask.
I'm experiencing that right now with
a newborn.
With a newborn,
right?
And it's been hard for me, and my wife knows this. But like, I was just running and gunning. I didn't have a girlfriend. I was killing deer or fishing,
right?
Every day. And if I wasn't doing that, I was getting drunk on the golf course. And then I started dating my wife. We had our first kid. I had to tone that down a little bit. And
I come home in the off season. And I'm like, man, I want to run down to the river, go catch some stripers. And I walk in, the house is a little hot. And I'm like, no, I'm not even going to ask.
My wife always tells me, I'm like, can I go fishing today? And I ask because like there might be something we need to do as a family. Like she needs the truck or something, right? And she goes, have I ever told you no? I go, no, you haven't. But I also know there's times when you probably should say no.
She's not going to tell you no.
Oh,
she expects you to know.
And that's what it is.
In for trouble.
No,
if you don't read the situation properly.
Read it. That's and don't even ask. Like growing up, you knew.
Yeah.
Like my brother didn't know. Both my brothers didn't even know. My parents would be at each other's throats. They'd be arguing about something, and he'll walk up and be like, "Can I have $20?" And I'd be like, Jeff, just know the situation, With Crystal, I've asked her, and she'd be like, have I ever said no to you? Or of course, go. Because she knows I know when to just, like, here's an example, right? When we first started dating, there's one of the rivers in Connecticut that I fish all the time, the Houstonic, and there's a walking trail on it. And all of May, the striped bass fishing is really good down the river. And I used to get home from working, landscaping, and then I used to grab the aluminum boat, go running down to the ramp, and immediately get into the river every day. And one time she called me. We weren't living together yet. She's like, where you at? I was like, I'm still at work. And she goes, and I look up. She's on the walking trail. I was like, I just hung up the phone and I took off upriver. It was as quick as that. And I was like, and then for the rest of the day, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say later.
Yeah.
I was like, I just got caught, And did she probably go walking down there? Yeah, on purpose to see, because she knew she'd be able to catch me out. But that's why we are like what we are. Like, so we have an understanding. So she's a teacher. So in the summer, it's great because she has off.
Sure.
So she can help with the kids.
When you're busy.
And when I'm busy. And then in the winter, when she's busy, I'm helping with the kids and the daily routines and everything. So it really works well together. But she understands. And it's taken a lot of time.
So September and October are probably a pain in the ass for you guys when you're back at school.
My parents
and I'm calling you and be like,
yes.
Matt, can you get me on your boat today?
Plus I miss my family because they're back in Connecticut. And
how far of a drive is that from your house? And I want to ask you about that.
Yeah.
From your house to Connecticut.
From
the
Cape,
4.5 hours. 4.5. So you did a show with Carter Andrews, and I remember him walking out of a cabin, and it said your last name on the cabin. And when I pulled down your street, I remember the way that cabin was situated in the background, and I look over here, and your house is over here. How many like what's the situation with the houses and the cabins where you are in Cape Cod?
It's considered a condo complex, because there's more than 5 of them. We own 3 of them, and various owners.
And it's something that your family or your dad purchased, third generation. They bought it in the past or built them, and it stayed in your family.
My dad bought the first one for $13,000. So my dad bought one. His brother bought one. My grandmother owned another one prior to that. and she bought it like 3 years after they were built.
Gotcha.
So we've grown up there. That's how I started the Cape. Is 2 weeks out of the year in the summer we'd go up there, and it was those like 2 weeks I'd wait for all year long. Straight bass fish, and then we'd fish the back beaches for straight bass, off the shore and everything. And then that's where the tuna thing came in. Is eventually I just went on to bigger and better things.
Back to gear.
Yep.
Sorry, I did enjoy that a lot, by the way.
Right.
That was freaking great. And Nate deals with the same shit at his house too. And Scotty will too. Scotty's got a girlfriend. He's not quite there yet. All right, last lure question. I want to get a couple
Sure.
other things. Go to poppers, top water. What are those?
I'm not
And I ask you this because I sort of know.
Guys do well on poppers, but you have to have the right type of clients that are willing to put the work in.
To work them a certain way?
To work them and keep using them. So most of the time, so if you throw poppers or any lure for that matter into a feed or a raging boil on the surface, they're going to get eaten.
Yeah.
That's not where a lure tends to shine.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what was...
it's like our day if we were throwing top waters in there. Like you got to be able to work that thing properly to get a bite. We were struggling getting bites on.
Like that one video that I just posted of me and you, that one cast.
Mhm.
If that cast was 10 feet to the right or left, it wouldn't have gotten eaten. You know what I mean? Has to be the perfect cast.
Sure.
So where poppers have been working really well past couple of years is early mornings and just blind casting.
They're in the vicinity.
They're 5 or 10 feet down. You're not going to mark them on down scan because they're shallow.
Right.
So by the time they come close to the boat, they go down, they disappear. You can mark them on side scan away from the boat. And those are just cast and cast and cast. And then the fish will just blow up on the popper. You use that popper to call them into you. What I run into a lot is guys will take one cast or two casts and then they're like, all right, we're done. And they put the rod down. I'm like, no, you guys got to keep casting. They're like, no, we don't see anything. They're here. Just trust me, they're here.
So it's more of a client charter situation of why you're not just a popper guy. It's got to be the right guy, the right scenario.
And historically speaking, poppers have never been used. They've never been a go-to east of the Cape. South of the Vineyard, New York,
Yellowfin,
Jersey, they work well down there.
Yep.
But they're in a completely different type of fishery based on the amount of bait that they have, what the fish are feeding on, how they feed, the depth they're in, all that stuff. And I've never fished down in New York and New Jersey because I'm too busy here.
Yeah.
But the guys I know, clients that they go down there, they're like, the stick baits don't work the same way down there that they work east of the Cape. It's all poppers down there. Just like the Hoagie Pro Tail. They make the biggest Hoagie Pro Tail that Mike makes is 9-inch, right? That is widely used down there. When the guys come up east of the Cape, I'm like, that's cute, take it off. Because they just don't work for us. Because we don't have, yes, we have big bait.
Is it a different species that's the issue? Or is it just the water scenario too?
No, it's all bunker down there. So the fish are not keyed in because every day is different, but the fish are used to seeing bunker.
The bulk of their bait is bunker, sure.
Right. And usually in a day, a fish is going to see bunker at some point or another. So they're going to recognize them in the area.
That is one thing that's cool about the Cape. And hopefully when Nate tags along that he can see it is the diversity of bait.
Everywhere.
It's different when you go from here to there. It's 5 miles. We went from bunker in the bay to Half Beaks east of the Cape, and then towards Stellwagen Bank was all butterfish and
sand eels.
You get sand eels, and then there's guys in the bay with bluefish for commercial, like full on bluefish that we would catch on a fly rod and be like, "This is great," or put down as bait. And it's very diverse, and I think that's what makes it a cool fishery.
That's what makes it a hard fishery.
It's hard.
Right.
Because you can run into a different school of fish on something completely different, and you look at your bait, soft plastic, and it's not even in the realm of what those fish are keyed on.
One of the reasons you first got a hold of me years ago was because of the video I did with Johnny from Australia, right? That one video was me, him, and Jason from Siren, and that video showed that video was just Cortland C16 the entire 3.5 hour fight getting dumped off the reel. But Johnny was talking about it in the video. He said, when we have bluefin come into Australia, they hit anything. Anything we throw in front of them, they eat. He goes, here, it's so difficult because there's bait everywhere. He goes, down in Australia, there's no bait. So they're opportunistic feeders. They're going to eat anything that's put in front of them. Here, all they have to do is go 10 more feet and they can have all the bait they want.
Or something different.
They don't need to eat that. That's why it's trickier here to catch them. South of the vineyard, like you were talking about, there's no bait down there. So when you find fish, that's because there's bait in that one tight area. So things that we pay attention to down there, we don't pay attention to east of the Cape.
Got it.
Okay.
Boat. What are you running for a boat for your charter service?
A 2019 27 Onslow Bay.
I asked you because you said this is like the fastest, one of the fastest, if not the fastest center consoles that you can get. And I always thought it was based on like motors, right? That's why you're going fast. But if you were to put, let's say, 300s on a different boat, 300s on your Onslow, like what is it about an Onslow that makes this? Is it just the shape, the way it draft? Like what makes it fast?
The shape, the hull, big motors.
And what are you running for motors?
I just got rid of my 350s. I had Verado 350s, and it's not a downgrade, it's actually an upgrade, but I went to the V8 300 Mercuries, which are a little less horsepower, but I'll only lose around 2 miles an hour because they weigh like
2 or 3.
I know. Two motors?
Yeah, or 3.
Yeah, twins.
I
have a 27-foot boat, so
it'd be tough.
For me to have 350s on a 27, that's a lot of power for a 27.
The boat wouldn't even touch the water at that point.
Right. I had it up to, 3 guys, 4 guys in the boat with me, full tank of gas and ice. I can get up to close to 60, which is...
It's a lot.
Yeah. You take all those people out, and I'm in the mid to high 60s, with an empty tank and by myself. I never use it.
I know.
Because it's I don't want to say it's useless power.
It's excessive, but you could if you needed to.
Exactly. Because if there was an emergency or a situation where you had to get home or you had to go help somebody, you have it. The reason I went to the 300s is because my fuel efficiency will almost double and I'm only losing 2 miles an hour.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and they're just
and you just repowered motors this year, correct?
Yeah, 0 hours on them. We actually go there tomorrow to pick up the boat to get it out of the place that repowered it.
So when do you do your trial runs on those motors that you got to?
They did them already.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. So they'll repower the boat, they'll program it, they'll turn the motors on, because the newer motors, you can't just put them on the boat and go. You have to turn them on and program them. And they sea trialed it. She actually said the guy kept the boat out longer than he should have because he loved the boat so much. He's never been on one. So they just went for a joyride. But he said the boat was, great. I'm looking forward to this.
And you're going to pick that up this week.
Tomorrow.
Right? Tomorrow. At the Cape.
At the Cape. And I'm going to bring it back to our place.
Connecticut.
No, I'm going to leave it at the Cape.
Are you?
Yeah.
Is it typically what you do?
No, typically because of COVID, we had issues getting motors. Mercury was 14 months out on their ordering, which is, if you think about that, that's substantial because you have to think almost 18 months in advance if 100%. You want motors. So here it is June, right? If I want motors for the following summer, I have to order them now. If I wait till August, now I have to go a whole nother summer without them. That's why it was so hard to get motors. So these motors were 19s and COVID hit in 20? So we couldn't get motors. So this is the first year in 4 years where I have new motors. I'm psyched, and I used to bring the boat back to Connecticut so my guy here could do all the work on the motors. We'd do like a full tune up and a full once over on them. And I'd look them over. And anything there was maybe an issue, would just replace it. But now the motors are brand new at full warranty. I'll just leave it at the Cape.
Makes sense. All right. So that's gear. Mm-hmm. Went over gear last year, this year, Bluefin Plus.
Yep.
where can people find you other than Bluefin Plus as far as your service? It's Tighten Up Charters.
Tighten
right?
Up Charters, yeah.
And that's on Instagram.
Tighten Up Charters CC.
CC, correct.
Yeah.
Which stands for
Center Console or Cape Cod.
Sure, either one.
Yeah.
Convenient.
Yep.
And they can reach out to you and
You reach out to me. My cell phone number is on all my media. So it's never an office number. It's never you could always email. A lot of times people want to email a more informal way.
Sure.
That's by all means. tightenupcharters@gmail.com. You can call me at any time. Text me.
you could email Crystal to find out what Hoagie Pro Tail paddle size that Matt's
What
using.
size is
if you
working.
need to.
Yep.
All right. And then your season's going to kick off, like you said, mid to late June. You'll start thinking about it.
Mid to late June. If you're trying to set yourself up for the season, you have any questions, or you want to try to figure out what I'm using, without a subscription, you can go on Bluefin Plus and you can look. Everything that I use in my operation is on that site, and you could buy it anywhere you want. You could buy it on that site too. But if you were setting yourself up for this upcoming season with gear and what you wanted, everything that I use is on there.
There's
sense. Nothing hidden. That was never available when I was, first starting and trying to figure out, because I wanted to know what other guys were using, and everybody always kept it hidden,
except for the Hanes underwear logo, which
Right.
you got to throw up.
Right.
There. Okay.
I'll expect a call from them for sponsorship.
Royalties.
And nobody ever had that. Everybody kept it a secret
Sure.
back then. And I'm trying to put it out there because, I think it's better for the fishery. It's better for, sustainability, all this stuff.
Makes sense. So bluefinplus.com.
Yep.
Bluefin Plus on Instagram.
Bluefin-
Tighten Up Charters CC on Instagram.
Yep.
And do you have a website for Tighten Up Charters as well?
Yep. Tighten Up Charters.
And your email's on there.
Yep.
So if they want to get a hold of you, any of those DM, text, email.
DM, text. There's a message link on Bluefin Plus and Tighten Up where they can send a message through the website too.
Perfect.
And it'll pop right up. Or just give me a call. My phone that's sitting right here is the number that's on all the media.
All right.
You'll just get me directly. And, if I can't take you or if I'm booked, I'll put you in the right direction with somebody who, I value as a good charter captain.
Correct.
If you want a smaller boat, we have a 23-footer. The 23-footer takes 1 to 2 people, 3 at max. It's a 23 contender with a Yamaha on it. That's Matty D'Ambrose. He's my second captain. Matty's learned from me for years. Great at what he does. He's got 2 speeds. He's got stop and go. So expect to go fast on that boat all day long, except when you're fishing. And then Cody Kosak is going to be running the 21 flats boat for, light tackle enthusiasts for striped bass in Connecticut.
Perfect. Well, you said it all, man. I think, like I said, episode 2 with Matt Perachio. I don't know how many we'll do, but I like having you on.
I enjoy it.
I think maybe we'll get you back on in the fall of 2024 to do a recap on this year's season.
And let's get some guys listening and some viewers to either send me an email or send Brooks an email or reach out to Cortland or Tighten Up, Bluefin Plus, anybody, and let us know what you guys want to hear. Let us know what you guys want these discussions to be about. And we'll structure, these podcasts based upon, what you guys want to hear.
I think that's a good idea because the last 2 episodes we've gotten over kind of the base overview, right? I feel like we need to introduce you, what's your project, like,
Right.
what you know what I mean? We've kind of covered like the basics here. So maybe we can kind of utilize some of your Bluefin Plus questions.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, Matt, bring your top 5 questions you got from this year, for the November episode, or we'll send something out on social that basically people can ask us what I should ask you in the
right, because the viewers and listeners are the ones that are most important.
I'm all about that. I just feel like we needed to kind of get these 2 episodes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
We'll get the baselines done,
which we've done.
And now we can fine tune this to structure it around what people need to know.
Maybe we can have an episode where Crystal sits here. We can have like wives of charter captains episode.
Yeah,
and it's just the bullshit that they have to deal with.
And I guarantee there's a lot of bluefin fishermen that can directly relate to them waking up at 3 a.m. and the wives having to take care of the
We'll
kids.
find a new female-based audience from that episode.
Yep. And then the guys can say, here, listen, you're not the only one who deals with this.
It might help men out that are charter captains.
Right. Probably
Like,
not.
God, yeah, I was gonna say we could help all the. Yeah, you're probably right.
Probably not. But we could try.
We can try. All right. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you, Nate. I hope you sucked up a lot of that info. I know that you're gonna be itching to get out there.
He's not itching. Look,
Nate was like, dude, I'm gonna come on this podcast.
Do you want to go? Would you look forward to something like that or not really?
Bro. I would.
Not really.
Like
I would.
No, he would say that right now, and then his first feed on the surface, he would be like, "When are we going back?"
You have to see it for the first couple times to understand it, because like even me, like I'm not dreading the season starting, but I'm kind of like the grind has to start again. You know what I mean? But the minute I see that first one start, I'll turn into a child again.
Right.
You know, even if I'm having a bad morning, I wake up with a headache.
I'm the complete opposite of what he is. And and we grew up together.
In regards to
I'm,
life.
Well, yeah. Pretty reserved. Like I'm very structured, very like where he's just like, sometimes we'll go and do things and it's just like, right now, let's go. Right now. We got to go now. And I'm like,
So Brooks, you've done all of this. Would he be more of a troll, bait, topwater craziness, or jigging?
I think he'd be into the bait. With like Nate's a tinkerer.
Right.
He likes he wants to what's the balloon depth, right? What's the bait? What's the tide? What's the this? What's the that? Like I want to show him a feed. Like a topwater feed, like Cast and Blast once, and then I think he would be into the bait side. Like it's calm, but there's a lot of detail.
Right. So I asked.
Go look at Nate's desk when you leave here and look at the folders. He's got something with like the exact date, time of something happened from 7 years ago, and I'll need it, and he'll go, "Here you go."
We went last summer up to Ontario.
Yep, for salmon trolling.
Yeah. And it was great. I'd never done.
You thought that was great?
Thing. I'd never done that before.
It was good action.
Oh, okay. It was. I've never been on the lake.
I'm not
trolling.
I'm not a trolling guy.
Everybody told me it's like a slow death.
This was good.
Okay,
and I've done it.
We
a
were
lot of
headed
times.
back by 9:30 in the morning. We're like, yep, this is good,
dude.
Okay,
I told
so that's what'll happen. You'll come with me, and we'll have an insane morning. You'll be destroyed and exhausted by 9:30. You'll be like, "This is the best. I can't wait to come back." I'll be like. Okay.
No, but my point with that was there were points like I said, I'm sitting there kind of taking it all in, like observing everything, just kind of wrapping my head around it. Then everything starts like happening.
Yeah.
And it's like grab that.
Yep.
That's where I'm just like, whoa. Like
see, you have no choice. You won't have any choice on my boat. And it's no. It's not because either you're doing and helping or you're in the way. That's what happens. And it's not because it's just the way topwater works.
We'll be in the way. I'm in the way. Every time I go offshore,
he said the same thing too. It's like, and he's done it a handful of times.
Well, he got hit in the head.
Right. No, he's talking about when I go like offshore on a sport boat, I'll sit up in the bridge and stay off the deck because I'm in the way. But
right, it's not. See, so people say to me, they said, "You don't take 6 people." I said, "Look, legally I'm allowed a 6-pack charter. Legally I'm allowed to take up to 6 people. I don't take 6 because I don't want to. 6 is too many. If we're bait fishing, that's a different story. If we're striped bass fishing, different story. When we're running around topwater fishing, 4 people is the max that I want to take, right? And most guys don't take over 4. And it's not because it's just too many people in the way. That's what it is. So people say, "Oh, I'm going to bring another person. Don't worry, they're not going to fish." I say, I don't care if they fish. They're in the way. It's just the humans on the boat.
Yeah.
The bait fishing thing, there's a lot to it. People think it's a lot easier than it is. I remember asking a guy who used to come with me, good friend of mine, Chris, years ago. I said, "How come so-and-so is so good at bait fishing? He's always catching fish when nobody else is hooking up." He goes, "You know how detailed you are and you look at every single thing that you do with the topwater?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's exactly what he does with the bait." And it took me years to figure it out, but now I can hang, I'm not going to say with the best of them because there are bait guys that are well beyond, my knowledge and skills when it comes to bait fishing. But I mean, I had another guy who's predominantly a bait fisherman next to me 3 years ago in November, and we were fishing 3 rods. He was fishing 4 rods. He hooked 5 fish that day. We didn't hook 1. And I still to this day don't know what he was doing that I wasn't doing. And we were trying to figure it out. And he felt bad on the radio calling me. He's like, man, I'm hooked up again. And I was like, God, what is he doing? And he couldn't even figure out what he was doing, but there was something so small that he was doing. Bait fishing would be great for you because you could suck that all in. The topwater thing is going to be a little bit different because topwater, it's not what you're using, it's where you use it. That's what I always say. I don't care what lure you're using. There are times where it doesn't make a difference, but it's more about where you put it and when you put it there and how you retrieve it. That's it. That's the most important thing. So the topwater thing you will like. My father doesn't like the topwater game. He doesn't. It's too chaotic for him. He would rather troll or sit, bait fish, or jig. He does like the topwater thing, but not for a long period of time. He likes to do it for a couple hours, and he's like, all right, I'm done. You can bring me home. It's too much.
Right.
Like Shane. Shane and David came, right? Shane couldn't. He's like, I'm going to stick to the sporties.
Yeah.
And the big boats. I can sit and watch TV and, it's more chill.
Yeah.
And
Nate doesn't want chill. I just think he's a tinker. Like I was showing you and Crystal the gears back there with the braid. Like I'll design a braid with some guys and they'll say, hey, this is too loose or too tight. I will call Nate and he will have that gear changed and doing something different out there in 1 hour.
Well,
he's just, that's what he enjoys doing. So I think the bait thing might be cool. And it's not, guys always like frown upon, oh, you're bait fishing. This is a different type of bait fishing.
Yeah, you're not sitting next to the pond holding a bobber. You essentially are, but you're floating in a boat with a balloon, but is your bait fit? Okay. There's a picture on my phone. I can't show it to you right now, but if your down rod's typically always in the back of the boat, your down bait, because you want to see it on your screen. So you mark the lead on your screen and you can see the line going across your screen where the lead is. I've watched a fish come off the bottom on the screen twice, and he comes about 10, 15 feet up and then he goes down, right? If you're sound asleep, you'd never notice that. And then I'll walk to that rod and I'll drop it down another 12 feet and I'll watch it on the screen as I'm dropping it down, and I'll drop it down to right where the fish comes up to. And then I'll watch that fish come right back up off the bottom and grab the bait. And then the rod will fold over. Those are the details that you want to pay attention to.
It'll be fun. What's the worst that's going to happen? We're in Cape Cod hanging out with him.
Yeah.
And then we go get chowder and some lobsters.
And some clams on the house
his
shell.
His neighbor is a lobsterman. So when you roll in, it's like...
Oyster farm.
You get little necks lobster. It's like you eat so much that you don't even want to get up to tuna fish
Scallops.
the next day.
We'll go get squid at the pier at the end of the night.
You'll have eaten 2 pounds of butter by the time we leave and go home.
And it's fantastic.
And it's flawless. It's fun. So, all right. You said it all, Matt. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate you and everything you do for me as a friend and obviously for the company. Thank you for being here. Nate, episode 2, Matt Perachio, Bluefin Tuna charter captain. Listen to Cortland Hook the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. We have clips on Instagram. Check every episode out at cortlandline.com. Looking forward to the next time you're coming on, man. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll put the link for the podcast up on both of our websites, Tighten Up and Bluefin Plus. So you can find it there also.
Sounds great. Thanks for listening, everybody. This is Cortland Hook Podcast.